You're watching the She CEO podcast with Dr. Julie Ducharme, talking with female CEOs from all over the globe.
Hi, I'm Dr. Julie Ducharme, back for another episode of She CEO. This is where I get to interview women around the world in every industry you can imagine who are killing it as a CEO. Today, I'm so excited to have Laura here with us. And pre-show, we were just talking about all the amazing things she has going on. And nothing gets me more excited than hanging out with women who are just amazing and doing this stuff. And Laura and I met each other, I think about a year and a half ago at the Castle event. And then we saw each other at New York. And of course, we're connected through Karen Weaver, which we love our Karen Weaver. She's amazing. And, you have such a unique story, Laura. I have not run into anyone who has a story like yours, which I love. And I love your book out. I actually bought it and read it. A funny thing that happened on my way to life. And so what I love to do is I know you, but our listeners don't know you really well yet. And so I love to have you talk about your story and everything you do. But before we even get too far into that, Laura here, just so you don't know, she's a best-selling author, a Forbes Business Council member, an international keynote speaker, which I've got to see twice, a CFO of a multi-million-dollar business. She's creator of the Queen Code Mastery, which we'll talk about, a framework that blends decades of boardroom leadership and deep inner sovereignty work. She has survived a house fire, won the lottery, discovered her biological father wasn't who she thought, and turned every plot twist into a principle. Her work teaches women that peace isn't something you find, it's a policy you write. Okay, I see 4 movies in that bio right there that we could write. I mean, when I'm reading this, I'm like, what? So why don't we start with where it started and how you ended up in this space with this amazing bio.
Well, thank you for having me, Julie. It's so great to reconnect with you and your audience. Just when you were talking, I'm thinking, could we just do a Netflix series, maybe? Just a short series? Something.
We should.
So I'm not sure how I got where I am now. It was just, living life and moving through it. I started out in the Midwest growing up and moved to California when I was 18 with my best friend's family, and everything just kept going from there. So I don't know. This is why my book is called A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to My Life, because here you are thinking that your life's going to go a certain way, and it doesn't. Things happen, and sometimes they're awesome and sometimes they're more challenging. But what I found through all of it is that gratitude can be found in every situation. I've had multiple, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've had multiple businesses. I've had a bread store. I've had a horse stable. I've had a pottery and art studio. So I don't know. This is just who I am. I don't know why. I think sometimes my friends who've known me for a long time probably look at me and go, couldn't you just have a hobby? Does everything have to be a business? But somehow it does. And then, I've throughout all of it, I have these stories, and I just had it in my heart for a long time to want to write a book. And so that's where I currently am. With the book journeys, and just even amazed. Nobody's more surprised than me at the success of both of my books. Yesterday there was more awards announced, and actually all 3 of my books won awards in with that group, and I'm humbled and honored and again grateful. So, but also having said all that, my day job is CFO and owner of our family business. So that keeps you going. That's the common thread through it all.
I feel so much synergy with us because I'm a serial entrepreneur as well. And I really resonate with your story because like you, it was kind of like, I grew up in a very simple kind of farm life, and I just wanted to play sports. And, if you would have asked me when I was, in my 20s, that I would be doing this in my late 40s, I would be like, you're crazy. I wouldn't do that. And like you, when you said everyone's like, can you just have a hobby? I was just laughing because I'm like, yeah, everything I get, I'm like, oh, I think we could make money out of that. We could totally turn that into a business. And I just love that synergy because, you know, a big part of our economy is actually women businesses that are growing. And I think very often that women dream, but they don't implement. I hear women dream all the time about all these amazing things they want to do, but they don't implement. And I feel like there's a shift right now. And it's people like yourself, I believe, that are really empowering women to go after those dreams and build that because your stories are what are giving other women strength to go, wait, oh, she did that and she made it through this and this and this. And I think that's so powerful. I was looking at your website and something that caught me is it says on here, you're teaching women to lead from sovereignty, not fear. And I actually looked up sovereignty because it's been a minute since I was like, wait, I know sovereignty, but like, what's the definition of that? And it said it means supreme power or authority. And I was like, oh, I really like that. So talk to me about how you help women lead from sovereignty, not fear, because I don't feel like sovereignty is a natural thing that women always grasp onto.
I agree with you. So what I discovered a few years ago is that it actually came through a conversation with one of my mentors. Businesses have policies, right? Like businesses have, these are our hours. These are, if you own a retail store, you have a policy about what the returns are, what the exchanges are. There's lots of policies. And I realized that we should have policies.
Mm,
People, women, and we do. A lot of people call them boundaries. I call them personal policies.
mm,
And from that grew Queen Code Mastery, my Queen
mm,
Code signature program. And it actually, through archetypes of the queendom, it shows us, it highlights what stories we might be telling ourselves
mm,
and leads us through those to reframe them
mm,
and give ourselves more power to rule our
mm.
queendom. That's the whole
Yeah.
idea of it, is that, and the beauty of it is that our our personal policies are changeable. They evolve with us. You could have a certain policy last year that you don't have anymore now
Mm,
because it doesn't suit you. But we can tell any story we want and we will believe it. You can
mm,
tell a victim story. You can tell a poor me story. You can tell, a story of I'm always working and nobody ever helps me.
mm,
But a lot of times they're just not true, but
mm,
we believe them. And so that's what the Queen Code Mastery does. And that's actually in a different way what my Queen Code, the book, is
mm,
about. Well, is just looking at how we can empower ourselves, how we can
mm.
lead ourselves to be the rulers of our lives, the queens of our lives.
Yeah, I love that. Someone said to me one time long ago, no one's coming to save you. So sometimes you have to save yourself. And one person said, "Oh, that's so negative." And I'm like, "No, but I get that because you're right. Like if we're carrying a victim story, no one's going to get us out of that story but ourselves." And so there's so much power in that. And I love the word sovereignty so much because after I looked it up, I was like, gosh, we don't use that word anymore. And that's a powerful word. And most women, at least in my opinion, after traveling the world, and I know you've traveled the world a lot, is that culturally women are not taught to step into sovereignty. They're not. They're taught to step into such smaller roles. So, what your book is doing, what the Queen Code is doing is really like shifting cultural paradigm of how women should step into it because I know for a long time as, a sports player, I was trained to step into a room as a very powerful person because we wanted to intimidate the team. I was very much like I would get my bosses would be like, "You're too intimidating. You need to be nicer." And I'd be like, "I'm not even doing anything. I'm just walking into a room." Right? But we were trained, "Hey, when you walk into that gym, you better look strong and powerful." That was a really negative thing for me like with my work when I was working corporate is I was like penalized for that. And so I very much like like pulled myself back to a much more like my demeanor was much littler because of that. And I think that's such an important point that, culture oftentimes penalizes women for coming in to the power, the sovereignty that you're talking about. And I love that. And I think this is why we've got to keep encouraging women to do this, right? To step into your power. In my book, I talk about owning your power. And a lot of women are like, what does that mean? Like, what does it mean? And like, you have a power that you can own, but very often you don't because you're fearful, which is the other thing you talk about is to not have fear. And man, I'll tell you, fear is a powerful thing, isn't it? I mean, I think about the things that I was afraid of, and I'm sure you can think of some things you were afraid of that stopped you, right? And, it's funny. I remember someone telling me that I used to teach speech, and they came out to me. I was a professor, and they said, you know what? I would rather die than speak in front of someone. And they were like, I would rather get an F and flunk this class. And I was like, it's just 10 minutes. But it was interesting to me that they were willing to flunk the whole class because they were so fearful of speaking. And I don't know if you can speak to any fears that kind of stopped you that you overcame when you were going through this.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're taking me back to high school and speech class when absolutely didn't want to do the speech. Like you don't want to, and that's what, 20 people that you already know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was funny if a few years ago after our fire, a friend of a friend, we're at lunch and said, what are you afraid of? I'm afraid of, my family has a history of diabetes, and I'm so afraid that I'm going to get diabetes. And first of all, like mindset wise, like, no, like that's not a good place to be, like constantly
Yep.
fearing whatever the thing is. If you keep naming the thing that you're afraid of, you're going to bring more of it in. But
Mhm.
my response to her was, my house burned down. I'm not really afraid of much anymore. But I was business. I mean, there's so much, to be afraid, but to be afraid of in life if you want to. Uh, I I moved from like I said before, from my home in the Midwest to California. Luckily, I had my best friend's family to live with. I couldn't imagine doing that on my own, just picking up and going. And I was able to lean on them for a while and live with them, and they supported me. But business wise, and I've written about this in a couple different places, I had a failed business,
Mhm.
and it was really hard to move on to the next one.
Mhm.
But I think for me, at least at that time, I had such a drive and such a desire to do the next thing
Mhm.
that, and I always say, I argued with myself. This is what it is. I argue with
Mhm.
myself about things, and that's what it was. It was arguing with myself about the do I do this next thing? What if this one fails? What if I'm not
Mhm.
successful? Well, would you rather live your life and look back and say, well, I'll never know?
Mhm.
Or would you
Mhm.
rather go forward and say, well, I did it and maybe it didn't work out, but I did it.
Mhm.
And like you said,
Yeah.
like you're this person you're talking about, I'd rather die. No, I wouldn't rather die than do it. I would
Yeah.
rather experience it and say that I tried and actually I lived through it somehow and here we still are.
Yeah, I love that. And I think culturally we put so much negativity on failure, and failure, in my opinion, is just part and parcel of life. I mean, if I didn't have certain failures, I wouldn't have moved on to certain successes that I had, but I had to fail at it first. And I'm a big advocate, especially for our youth, to just really say, like, listen, failure is just part of it. Just get through it, get it done, fail, and move to the next thing. Where growing up, failure in my generation was very much like, oh, you failed. Well, you should just, close it up or shut it down. And like you, I've had those moments of like something's completely flopped. I'm like, okay, that flopped big time. Right. And then it was like, but later I'm like, well, let's just keep going. And I remember I was interviewing Holly McPeak. She's the best defensive player in the world and for volleyball. And 3 times she was supposed to go to the Olympics and something happened. She tore a muscle, her teammate got injured. They were all things that were outside of her control. And I remember I asked her, "So what made you like keep going? Like, you missed 3 Olympics." And she's like, "I just got up the next morning and did it." And I kept going like, "But what did you do?" And she's like, "I just did it." And it hit me that like, why is she the best defensive player in the world? Because she was just like fine, next thing, let's go. And that was really powerful, is that she didn't have some deep analytical meeting. She was just like, I'm just going to do it. And she did, of course, eventually go and wins, the medals and all that stuff. But, Olympics only happen every so many years, and she missed the first 3 rounds. So she actually ended up going to the Olympics much older in her life, when she was one of the top players. So I love that. Now, you and I both had a chance to be in the Heroes Roar series with Dr. Karen, which we love so much. She always says there's a book in everyone, which I love. And so I think you've been in a couple of those. How many series have you been in for the Heroes Roar?
I'm in all of them.
You're in all of them. Oh my gosh. So how many books is that? I'm trying to
8.
8. Okay.
That's the funny thing about another funny thing. I was going to be in Siberian Tiger, one and done. That was it. And after I wrote Siberian Tiger, that's when I really enjoyed working with Karen and reached out to her and said, I have a book I'd like to write. Do you work with solo authors as well?
Mm.
And that's when a funny thing happened. On the Way to My Life came out.
Yeah.
And then, and again, that's another argument that I had with myself for years and years. I wanted to write that book. And then, of course, Queen Code, the book, came out. But at some point along the way, Karen said, hey, give me a chapter for every one of the books. And I did. So yeah, it was crazy, but that's also part of the journey. And I want to go back to what you're saying about fear, is that, and failure, is that I believe that any failure is an opportunity to learn and grow. And so even, in the times when I've not done, had a, I guess what somebody would consider a failure, you learn, there's something to learn from it, and there's some gratitude to be had in it. So, but yeah, the Hero Soror series is amazing. And yeah.
And now I know pretty much we can get all those on Amazon, right? And we can get all your books on Amazon. And I'm a big advocate. I say this in every podcast that I'm doing with someone who has a book, is I tell women all the time, go buy your books. And why? Because I remember when my first book came out, I thought, oh, all my family and friends are going to go buy it. They all asked me to give them a free copy, and I love them dearly. But I was like, no, I want people to buy my book. It's like $8, go buy it, right? And a lot of times people just don't think about it. But those of us who are not some brand name giant celebrity out there who's getting paid, a ton of money to write a book, it makes a difference if people purchase our books. And so I always tell all of our listeners, go out there, get on Amazon. If you can't find it, you message me on Instagram or whatever, and I'll get it. So I want to really encourage everyone, because, and every books that I see put out from Karen are phenomenal books. And I love that. Now, you also have a new anthology coming out. And that's available for pre-sale. Let's talk about that.
It's not out yet for pre-sale.
Not out yet.
We are still getting the authors. It's still available if somebody wants an opportunity to contribute a chapter. But yes, it's called Undeniable Presence, and it's very much what we're talking about. We want stories of women who are standing in their presence and have potentially been through challenges. But this is the thing, we're all still here. We're still here, and we have a story, and we have a message that is potentially inspiring for someone else. And so that's what it is.
We need to get that out to all the she talkers. We got lots of women who are standing in their presence. So we'll definitely connect on that. And then, of course, for those of you listening, we always follow up with our people in our podcast. And so when that comes out, Laura, we will put that out to all of our channels to make sure that everyone gets that. Now, I want to also touch on Moms Rising. I got to be in New York when we watched it. Oh my gosh, there was not a dry eye in the room, because it was so powerful. And I just want you to tell our audience a bit about Moms Rising and why were you on it, and what that is about.
Moms Rising is about the spirit of motherhood. And I like to say, because we've talked about this a lot within some of the cast members that were in this, it's not just about you and your mom or you and your children. There are other people in your life who potentially helped you experience the spirit of motherhood. might have been an aunt, might have been a grandma, might have been a good friend, but it's about these amazing women who are able to forgive, to support others, I mean, each story in that movie is different and each one is full. And each time, I've seen it a couple times, there's something different that you get out of it. And right now it's available to watch for free at momsrising.film, momsrising.film. So that we would love for anybody who, take a minute, give yourself the luxury of watching this movie and being inspired by these women, from people who ran marathons and climbed mountains to women who forgave the horrible things that happened in their lives. And it's just so inspiring. It's an amazing women who are business women and took what they learned from motherhood into the business world. So much there.
I love that. Karen and I were talking the other day that to me, it was so powerful because, the world needs the love of a mother right now. And as you said, it could be anyone, a friend, an aunt, a grandmother, but there's so much power in that and so much story and so many stories I share about people who are doing amazing things. It goes back to the inspiration from their mother. And, I was talking about Amelia Earhart in one of my talks, and it was very specific in her story that her mother encouraged her to go and do these things, which she may not have done if her mother hadn't encouraged her. And very often there's so many stories like this that, that we talk about that. And it's so powerful. And I think it's such a great way because there aren't a lot of movies out there that focus on this motherhood. There isn't. And so I loved it. And yeah, you can see the movie. It's so powerful. I hope there's like a second to it. I don't know what it would be, but there should be like a second onto it or something on that. And I love that. So make sure that you all check that out. We'll post those links as well. And we're coming to the end of the podcast. So I love to ask this question of if you could go back to your younger self and give your younger self advice, what would it be?
I think it would be that you'll be surprised. You're going to be surprised, but it's all going to work out. It's all going to be good. So, just keep going and enjoy everything.
Yeah, that's always my thought too, is I would go back to my younger self and say, it's going to be fine. Just keep going. Right. Because, we were talking about when you're so young and, at 18, it's like, okay, you need to go to college and pick what you're going to do for the rest of your life. And really, I think that's probably the worst thing that we could do. We really should just say, listen, go do your best and just follow the path. Right. And because I remember, at 18, I was like, oh, I got to pick my profession and this is what I'm supposed to work for 30 years. Oh, okay. This is a lot of pressure, and then by the time I was 25, I had a totally different perspective on life. And then when I was 30, it was even more different, And so I love that because I think it is true. And I try really hard with our youth today to tell them, hey, you know what? It's all going to be fine. It may seem like a big deal right now, but in the end, it's going to be fine. And so I love that. Are there any last tips, ideas, thoughts, or things that you want our listeners to know, check out, or anything that we can leave them with?
Just, I suppose that this idea of personal policies, it's really important. And notice what story you're telling yourself and know that you can change it. And we all, a lot of people bristle at the idea of boundaries and personal policies, but if you really look at things, you already have some, but they can get better. You can improve them. And when you improve them, it'll improve your whole life experience. I actually believe that.
I love that. Well, and we'll leave with this too, is that think about that word sovereignty, that Laura is encouraging women to lead with sovereignty, not fear, and definitely looking at her book, The Queen Code. Thank you so much for being on the show today. It's been awesome. And for those of you listening, we'll have all those links in the post for you. And as I always say, live, love, laugh, and always be your authentic self.
Thanks for watching the She CEO podcast. Don't forget to smash that bell icon and don't forget to like and subscribe.